Hello, welcome back. Today we're talking about thinking in English. A lot of you probably think that starting to think in English is a natural thing and it's going to happen very soon. And guess what? You're going to stop thinking in your language, in your first language, your mother tongue, and start thinking in English in every situation because your brain is going to somehow find this miraculous switch and your first language is going to be less important. That's not true. That's not going to happen. Thinking in English can happen, in fact, as a result of plenty of exposure. Plenty of means a lot, more than enough, lots, plenty of exposure to the language. So let's say that you live in Italy, you are Italian, and you move to Australia, and all of a sudden you're sharing a house with Australian people or people from different nationalities who don't speak your language. So you have to use English with these people. You get a job at a cafe and you're having to speak English with all the customers, and there are no Italians where you work. And you find an Australian boyfriend, and all you do is speak English with him. So English then becomes this huge part of your life. It's what you're hearing all the time. It's what you're forced to use to speak all the time. Naturally, chances are very soon you're going to start thinking in English. Chances are is a great expression. It means probably. Chances are you're going to start thinking in English. So that's purely a result of a lot of exposure. And when I say a lot of exposure, I'm really saying, guys, that you're going to be living in an English speaking country and your whole life is going to be in English all of a sudden. So even if you do speak Italian twice a week with your family from Italy, that's so little in comparison to all of the other hours of the week where you're using English. That's one thing. Great. It could be as well that even though you don't live in an English speaking country, so you're still in Italy, but English has become consciously a very big part of your life. So even though you speak English with your husband, you speak Italian with your husband who is Italian, you speak Italian at work, you are using the rest of your time for English. So you're not watching any videos in Italian anymore. You're only watching videos and listening to podcasts and doing things, being exposed to English all the time. You're reading in English. You're forcing yourself to speak, even if you're just recording yourself every day, talking to yourself, but you're doing that every day in English. It could be that you get to a stage where you catch yourself thinking in English a bit. So there'll be specific situations where you may go, oh, that's weird. I was just thinking about that in English, thinking about what I have to do after lunch in English. So odd. That could happen. But that is going to take longer to happen than if your life suddenly became all about English. That's the first thing I would like to tell you. Now, the second thing is that this belief that thinking in English has to be natural and organic and it's going to happen sooner or later and my first language is going to be forgotten is something that is very utopian. It's not realistic at all. So what you actually do to start thinking in English more is to consciously do that. So to engage in thinking in English. So let's say that you're chopping an onion for lunch. You're preparing your lunch, you're chopping an onion, you're peeling a carrot, and you're then thinking about, life. You're thinking about some things you have to do in the afternoon, and you'll catch yourself thinking in Italian if that's your first language. And then consciously you switch and you start to think in English consciously. So learning a language as an adult means, and as an adult means I learned at 15. So this is learning as an adult. Younger than 35, younger than 40 and so on, but still my brain was not the brain of a little kid in neuroscience. It was the brain of an adult in terms of learning languages. So, learning English as an adult, learning a language as an adult, means that you're going to have to be doing conscious things to learn. It's not a natural process for your brain. It's not organic. It's not automatic as it is for little kids. For you, it's going to have to be something that involves effort and involves your engagement in this whole activity. So this happens with me a lot. I have been living back in my country in Brazil for 11 years now, which is a very long time. So I left England 11 years ago after living there for 12 years. And nowadays, after 11 years, even though English is a huge part of my life, I speak English with my kids full time. I don't use Portuguese with my kids because obviously they speak Portuguese at school, and with family, they don't need me for that. I use English for work every single day. I listen to English every day. I read in English every day. I speak it every day. I still catch myself a lot of the time thinking in Portuguese because that's my environment and that is my mother tongue. So what I do in those situations is I consciously switch to English. And I get that question very often on Instagram, people asking me in the box, do you think in Portuguese or in English? It's almost like I have to tell you guys, oh no, I only think in English. For you to think that English, that I've reached a satisfactory level of English. It's almost like you need me to tell you that for you to have a satisfactory level of spoken English, you need to be thinking in English all the time. But do you see how crazy that is in terms of how kind of accommodated and comfortable your first language is in your brain, for you to want to completely get rid of that and replace that with English? It's just very unnatural and crazy, really. Listen, you shouldn't want to get rid of your first language and replace it with English. That's so not the point of learning another language. Learning another language means adding, means that you're going to know how to communicate to more people, means that you're going to be able to access more types of content, means that you're going to have access to more opportunities. It's not about erasing your first language, however unimportant you think your language is. So let's say you don't speak one of the four most spoken languages in the world. So your first language is not Mandarin Chinese, it's not Spanish or Hindi or English, obviously. Your first language is, let's say, Swedish. So you think that's a very unimportant language. Well, it's not. It's your language. So forget this whole thing that you're replacing your native language with English. You're just adding. And because English is never going to be the same as your first language, it's never, I'm going to say that again, it's never going to be the same as your first language. So drop that. Forget this goal that you have that, I want English to be the same as my first language, because you're going to die in frustration. You're not going to reach that level. It's just not how your brain is, unless you are, God, a massive genius. But then again, you're just an exception. So I'm not really talking to exceptions. I'm talking to learners as a whole, normal people like me. And basically, you're not replacing anything. So find room for English in your life. Find enough room consciously so that you can reach a level of speaking, especially, where you can relax and engage in conversation more naturally. So even though I'm like circling back to what I was saying about myself living in Brazil, I have to a lot of the time consciously switch to English. That's an amazing exercise for my brain because I'm pushing myself to think about what I'm doing, to analyze the environment. I do that a lot. Like notice things around me. Like right now, you probably can't hear it, but I hear dogs barking from a distance and I hear birds chirping from a distance. So I'll go over that in my head as I'm chopping the onions and I'll be like, okay, so I hear this, I hear that. I need to make sure I do this today, or I mustn't forget to call that person, or what am I going to do after I finish chopping this onion? Or this onion smells so strong, it's making my eyes well up, it's making me tearful, it's making me cry. And I'll go over things in my head as I'm doing stuff. But that's a conscious thing nowadays. When I lived in England for 12 years, English was a huge part of my life, but it was never full time because I lived with my parents and my mom and dad and my brothers, and we spoke Portuguese at home most of the time. Sometimes we would switch to English without noticing because we were living there for so long. So that kind of happens. But most of the time we were using Portuguese with each other. I messaged my friends in Brazil practically every day. There was always some sort of interaction. I used to be obsessed with Brazilian soap operas, and I used to watch that in England on the computer, honestly. So Brazil was always a massive part of my life, and I married a Brazilian. Yeah. So it's not that English replaced Portuguese. It never did. It was just added to my routine, to my life. So I worked in English. Before I became a teacher, I worked with English people every day. And then I started teaching English. Well, then again, I was at university studying English literature and creative writing. All my peers were native speakers, my teachers, everyone. I had English friends. So English was a huge part of my life, but it wasn't all of my life. And this is what the video is all about. For you to think in English, it can be and it should be a conscious thing for you to do because it will help you with your learning. But please forget this idea that English should replace your native language because that is very destructive. It's not going to get you anywhere and it's simply not realistic. All right, I hope this video has been very helpful for you today and that you take something away with you. I'll see you next time.